Welcome to Be Your Own Motivation, your podcast about fitness, health, and lifestyle.
All right, welcome back to the podcast Be Your Own Motivation. Today we have another guest. It was planned already for 10 months. We know each other for around about a bit more than 1.5 years, I would say, close to 2 years in the summer. And he is used to interview the other people. Now he is on the other side. So I will a little bit more interview him. And guys, I'm talking about Mr. Hybrid Fitness Podcast UK, Ian K. So he first had a podcast in OCR and then he jumped on the fitness racing. So welcome to the show, Ian K.
Thank you so much for having me, Tanya. It's a pleasure already.
It's a pleasure for me too. So now we have all the things turning around. So I was twice on your podcast for interviews about my races. And now all the spotlight is on you and not on me. So we will start a little bit all about your journey. So from the little Ian all the way up to today, about your health story, about probably health struggles, about how you came across OCR, how you came across fitness racing, and why you even did start a podcast. What was it about all this? So we start on the first point with your background, with your health story. So any particular things, like have you done a lot of sports when you were young, or just talk us through.
My childhood completely boring, and we don't. No, I'm kidding, Tanya. I'm kidding.
Oh,
We're done. Shortest podcast and Be Your Own Motivation ever. Just kidding, viewer and listener. It's sometimes hard to find the words when you're thinking about your own past, but when I was a kid, I wasn't a natural athletic kid. I'm still not a naturally athletic adult, to be fair, but I've always liked sports. I'm not sure if you have a TV program in Luxembourg called Trans World Sport. Has that ever come over, or is that just a British thing?
I don't think so. If so, I missed it, and I'm sorry.
It's okay. I'll explain it a little bit. Trans World Sport was something that came on the TV on a Saturday morning. It was on Channel 4, I believe it was. And listeners, viewers out there, I'm old enough to remember when we couldn't have streaming in the UK. We had 4 channels, unless you were very lucky, and then you had a satellite and you had more channels. But yeah, it was on Channel 4, and Transworld Sport showed all these sports across the world. So it showed like American football, it showed Australian rules football, it would show rugby sevens, it would show biathlon in the Winter Olympics, that kind of thing. And I always enjoyed watching that, and it was something I shared with my grandma and a couple of other family members. And like I said, not a naturally sporty kid, so all the sporty kids went off and played football because they're good. I was a natural defender in that I could just stand there, be in a lug, have people run into me, and just get in the way. But the prospects of getting on
a little bit similar than I was.
potentially, yeah, I was uncoordinated. I was usually the second to last kid being picked. I'm not going to explain who the last kid to be picked was, but yes, I was often being fought over of him go on your team. So I naturally kind of, let's say, gravitated towards these more unusual sports. So when I was again not naturally sporting, loved sports. So in school, I'd play rugby, even though we didn't really have a rugby team. I think the school had a single rugby game, and that I think we won. So yay, go us! Um, I played field hockey. Again, I'm just presuming everyone will be aware of field hockey. I will say to anyone out there who wants to play field hockey, play within your gender because mixed is so vicious. It really, really hurts. And the female athletes who are all amazing will hack your shins to bloody pulps. But they're all incredible and they can do it within the rules. But yeah, I played field hockey. I somehow played basketball despite the fact I'm of average height, and back then I was even shorter.
But
And
more in school or really in a team?
I didn't actually play. The thing to bear in mind in the UK, we don't have or we didn't have a lot of team sports out there in clubs. You'd have your football teams, and that was pretty much it. Then when it was time for me to go to university, I visited the University of Hull, which you won't be aware of, but it had a law school, so that's what attracted me. And when I was there as a potential fresher, you get taken to the athletic union and shown all the various sports that you can do. And one of them sports was American football. I was like, you know what? I've always fancied to do that. That looks like fun. And prior to going to uni, I found out there was a local American football team. So I joined it. Um, I will say I was just as good as American football as I was at regular football. Again, terrible, but I'm a fairly good teammate. So I do a lot of training. I would play a lot of special teams. For those of you who are unaware of American football, of special teams, you basically come on for like kickoffs and other events to give the actual people who can play football a rest. So I'd come on for that. I did okay to start a few games. I'd play cornerback if people are aware, and as I got older and slightly plumper, I'd move to safety. And yeah, I tend to play when there wasn't anyone else to play in that position, and I was serviceable. So yeah, yay me. So that kind of was the sporting. Then I left university. I joined back up with my club, who, much to my fortune, happened to well, kind of close the day before I got there, which I say much to my fortune in that we had to reset it. And because we had to reset it, that meant there wasn't a lot of players, which meant I got to play again, which is great. You know, I wouldn't have got in on the old team with 50 players, but 25 players, yeah, I can I can hold a kicking tee or run downfield. But yeah, so I did that for a while. I will say this was the early noughties. Our understanding of bodies, our understanding of nutrition, our understanding of all of that was nowhere near what it was now. And
Mhm.
invariably, because all I did really was I'd train with the team, I'd play games occasionally. I wouldn't do any strength and conditioning outside of the two training sessions. I wouldn't go out running. Invariably, I got myself injured. It felt like a really bad injury. It was, I know now, it was a sprain to my Suarez muscle. You know, that lovely muscle that kind of connects
Yeah.
your hips, which meant I couldn't run, which meant I was even more useless when it came to American football.
Yeah,
So
actually you cannot even lift your knee up, or can you? No.
no, I
Uh,
couldn't. You walk with it. It wasn't to the extent of being, you know, unable to walk without a cane or anything like that. But I thought
mhm.
that was my day of playing American football over. So I got into coaching. I coached quite successfully, relatively successfully. for 6, 7, 8 years. In that time, I mentioned earlier about nutrition. I didn't know nutrition, and I
Mm-hmm.
also didn't know the fact that I wasn't eating the right things at all. But because I was active, because I was young, and my metabolism was great, and it was keeping me as skin and bones. As soon as I stopped all
So
that,
yeah,
I,
so at what age was it when you started coaching?
probably about 23, 24, maybe
Okay,
25,
okay.
uh,
Mm-hmm.
give a take. Um, I
Mm-hmm.
I should say I was already coaching on the side anyway. I was coaching the young team because we'll probably get to this. I have a little bit of an addictive personality, not in a bad way, but in a good way, which means when I do something, I go all in on it. So I wasn't happy with just being someone who played on the team. I would get involved with the committee. I would coach the youngsters because no one was coaching the youngsters. I'd do all this. I'd fill the water bottles. I'd probably mow the lawn if they'd let me go near the mower, which perhaps thankfully they didn't. But yeah, so I moved full time into coaching alongside my day job. My day job was incredibly sedentary. I work in an office and that I still work in an office. So the combination of lack of movement, driving to work, not really having to walk that far, meant I ballooned up from a quote unquote fighting weight of um, roughly 11 stones to roughly 16 and a half stone. And I can tell from that face you're making.
You have to explain you have to explain us the stones, all right? Because we here are confused with those. Like I get pounds, but with stones also me, I'm lost for a moment. So you have to explain us a little bit how much this is in either kg or in pounds.
I forgot for a second that I think the UK was the only country, maybe UK and
Yeah.
Ireland, which used stones. So yeah, I was previously around about 154 pounds, around the 11 stone mark, and I ballooned up to about 224, and none of it was
Okay.
muscle.
Okay.
Um, you know, so size 38 waist and that kind of thing.
And in
Um,
what time span was it? Roundabout.
um, all the way, probably 5, 6, 7 years.
Hmm.
I enjoyed eating.
Yeah.
You know,
Like the
and
most
yeah,
people do.
I enjoyed eating. Got into a long-term relationship, which often leads to it as well. Um, and yeah, I had no motivating factor. And again, a little bit of a personality trait is my love language tends to be gifts. I like gifts giving, I like gifts receiving. So a lot of times, you know, a inexpensive gift would be a takeaway or a a box of chocolates and that kind of thing. So finding yourself snacking, you buy a big bag of Doritos and it was only until we'll get to this, we started going down in weight. But you look at one of them big bag of Doritos and realize that's like 3/4 of your daily calories intake in one bag, and it's rubbish.
Hmm.
So yeah, I enjoyed it, and eventually, yeah, I got to my 30s, XL t-shirt, size 38 jeans, and that. Um, thankfully, I have an okay body shape, if that makes sense. So, whilst my belly was big, it never overhung or anything like that, which helped on the way back. But
Hmm.
but yeah, so that's how I was, well, twice the man I am today. Well, I'm getting back there, but it is what it is.
Okay. So then we are around your early 30s, your beginning of 30s, or when you was this weight?
Early 30s, and it was a
Mm-hmm.
little after that. I want to say probably 2015, I want to say, was when I
Okay.
made the choice. So around about 32 for people doing maths at home. Um, so yeah, around 2015, and it's probably not that interesting a story, but I mentioned earlier about giving.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that would manifest itself in the office. And in the office, you bring muffins or you bring sweets or
Yeah.
you bring, yep.
Yeah,
Um,
it's similar. Like as you know, I worked in the office too for over 7.5 years, or probably 7 or 8 years. And yeah, I have to say, like I worked as engineer, so I worked with mainly men, obviously. And it was such a man thing in our country and office that, for breakfast, they would bring fancy stuff, going to the bakeries or whatever, and then spread it out and everybody would eat it. And then 5 years later, everybody is wondering, oh, how did I got here? And then everybody has like, really, like most men's had like after the first 5 year 15 kg on top, like those who would not do any sport next to the job, obviously. And so it's a common thing, especially in office job. I think nearly everywhere, right? And it's a big problem, and it gets not better these days because you have way more fast food. You have always more and cheaper for those stuff as well. Yeah, it's a
yeah,
common
and
problem.
exactly that. It used to be that a bag of apples would cost the same as a multi-pack of crisp, and no, it's not the case. And apples, no. I'll use UK price, but if I go to Tesco, Granny Smith, the green apples that I love, they're £2 for six. I can go and buy a six pack of Walker's crisp for a quid if they're on offer. So yeah,
Yeah.
eating healthy isn't cheap, as Tanya, I'm
Yeah.
sure you're aware.
Yeah.
Um,
100%.
but I was working in this law office. There was, I want to say, about six of us in this particular office room, and we brought in, I can't remember who actually brought in the snacks of that day. And a friend who worked opposite me, a girl called John Lever, who sadly I don't stay in contact half as much as I really should. She just made the comment of, you know, I don't think we should be eating this stuff, or words to that effect. We should be trying to be healthier. And to this day, I don't know why, but I just decided, you know what? I'm going to lose some weight. And we're going to get back to this addictive personality. I lost it in perhaps the unhealthiest way ever of
Mm.
cutting my calories down, right down. I think most days I was probably surviving on maybe 1,000 calories.
Oh, yeah.
It worked.
I'm not really surprised. I didn't know it, but I'm not really surprised by how the story led there. This is also a very common thing, especially for men, but also women, to to go fast down, because if you in your early 30s, usually as a man, it's pretty easy to lose weight. And the less you eat, the easier you lose it in the beginning. It works until a certain point, and then you get, yeah, out of trouble. All right, keep
Yeah, absolutely.
going.
So I lost it, and yeah, it was fine. I eventually, I still don't eat healthy. I really should, but I'm such a, I call it efficient. Some people call it lazy. I'm such an efficient person that, efficient food appeals to me. But yeah, lost a lot of weight. As part of the weight losing process, I did find sport again. I found, well, running. We started, well, initially not running. Initially it was the 7 minute workout. And I'm not sure if you've ever heard of that, but it started as a workout basically for people who were pro athletes to do 7 minutes of workout while we're, for example, at a hotel room, and it's effectively a
Yeah,
hit train. It's effectively hit training. It's
yeah.
14 exercises,
Yeah, that was a
and
little bit the thing around 2015. It started more, I would say, with YouTube videos like that for like really like something between 5 and 10 minutes you can do without equipment, just having probably a mat on the floor or and then somewhere with dumbbells probably or yeah. That's known.
so so I did that. It helped. It did help me. It also meant I had to eat a little bit more, which was good because, as you know, it's incredibly unhealthy to just eat nothing.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
it's
but
you're tall for 1,000 calories. That's not much.
no, it wasn't great. I'm about 5'11", 6. It depends who's asking. If the doctor's asking, it's 5'10". If it's and I don't need one, but if it's a dating profile, it's 6 foot. It's
Okay.
just just the natural joke that men of average height have. But yeah, so did that. Then we decided to do the couch to 5K. We didn't really have any kind of immediate desire to go and just run a 5K, or a park run or anything like that. But what we did think is we became aware of Tough Mudder and those kind of things. And I was aware of it anyway. And it was like, well, if I'm going to run, I might as well go and have fun doing it. So lucky us, this was the time of 2015, 2016, 2017 where you could go anywhere in the UK any weekend and there would be a Tough Mudder rip-off doing the race. A little bit now where we see lots of Hyrox tribute
Yeah.
acts and some good events as well. But yeah, there were a lot of those events. So I went and did a bunch. And as is typical for me, I got more and more into the community. I was on the Facebook groups. I was chatting to people. I was meeting people at races. Big shout out to the solo mudders who spent many a time in tents at Tough Mudders with, and it was how life went. I also started to run like I'm not going to say like a normal person, but regular races. So I'd be doing 10Ks and that.
Hmm.
And not a natural sports person as always, never been a speedster, but I can suffer for a long time. And therefore I naturally moved on to things like marathons and half marathons and that. Again, never fast, but I managed to complete them. Also did some long OCRs, did a couple of I think one 24-hour overnight race, which was fun as part of the team. And yeah, I was in a good place. And then that pesky 2020 came around.
Oh yeah. So just a
Yeah.
question. So you mentioned you did marathon, which is not a thing. Oh, I'm just doing it. Well, there are people they do that, and oh, next week I just run a marathon. I haven't prepared, but normal average person would prepare. So just on a note there, like also for the Tough Mudder races, have you really prepared for that? So I'm not aware, like in UK, do you have really special gyms where you have like kind of stuff where you can climb up and over or whatever things for obstacle training, I would say.
There
Did you had
are
that?
there are those facilities, not really in the part of the UK that I live.
Hmm.
We tend to supplement the running with going rock climbing, so bouldering, because
Okay.
that helps develop the grip strength. There are places where you can do monkey bars, but again, I was never very good at Tough Mudder anyway, so it didn't really matter.
Hmm.
I'd happily just give the obstacle an attempt and fall off. It was
Mm.
perfectly fine.
And then you did
And
burpees.
oh yeah, I never did those races where you did burpees.
Oh, okay.
Didn't do Spartans, never done a Spartan
Okay.
for that very reason.
What
But
was the punishment? What was the punishment in Tough Mudder when you didn't pass the obstacle?
if it was a monkey bars, there's usually water underneath, which is fine.
Oh,
So you just
okay,
fall in
that's your
and swim
punishment.
off. Yeah.
Okay. Got
So
it.
that's fine. So you had that. I did have a PT that helped me with get training generally. Great friend, lifelong friend there, and from that PT, I moved on to another PT, mainly for running, to be fair. So a great guy by the name of Neil Raby, who I still speak to today. He's still my physio, and that he's a really good guy, and he helped me with marathon prep. I did proper marathon prep, so I did a a 16-week plan. They never prepare you for how much a marathon takes over your life.
Yeah, it's extremely mental. It's extremely mental, and I haven't run one, but I just know everything that takes a few hours gets very mental, no matter what. Even you prepared your body for it, it's the mental part that breaks a lot of people, right? So and it's hard to prepare. Even your coach would, and then if we go 10 years back, mental training was not that big. I think nowhere really. That came more in the last decade with professional athletes first, obviously. And yeah, so yeah, how did your first marathon then went? That's interesting now.
Well, I'd love to say that what I did was I paced myself. I, and then I got a round of applause as I finished. What actually happened was I was running with a friend who was a lot faster than me.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to keep up with him because my first marathon, I'd followed a plan, but I hadn't exactly, I was between PTs, so I was following self-directed, did it with one of these gentlemen who did no training but was naturally good. And as we went past the halfway mark, it was Chester Marathon. As I went past the halfway mark, my watch went off to signify you've done a half marathon. And then it signified that I've got a PB. No, anyone who knows anything about marathons knows you should not be PBing your half
No.
marathon in a marathon.
Well, unless you have never done a half marathon, or if you really trained a full year and not did another half marathon before, like for testing or something. So there are ways it can happen in a good way, but yeah, this didn't sound like that.
No. So around
Okay.
mile 17, I discovered how fragile the body is when my left glute decided it wasn't happy with me anymore.
Oh,
And I then run walked the rest of the way. And yeah, I think it finished on the Chester race course, and I left a little piece of me on the Chester race course, shall we say. But it wasn't, well, it was my fault. They were handing out Lucasade Orange during it, not the fizzy, the still. And I've always liked Lucasade Orange. However, I've never tested it in race conditions. And
mm,
apparently, it doesn't agree with me in race conditions, as I found
yeah.
out. But yeah, so that was that. Then London Marathon was next. And what I did discover was as I was training for these marathons, I was piling a little bit of weight back on
Hmm.
because I was eating more sweet stuff because they tell you eat sweet stuff to get you through. And my issue is I have a sweet tooth, I have an addictive personality, and a large bag of Haribo, which you'd have some of the Haribo for your training run in a little pouch that you carry around with you, and then I'll go home and eat the rest of it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, but
Yeah.
any
I mean, it's natural. It's natural. That's why I don't carry that stuff with me, whatever I do.
Yeah, it's a good point. So yeah, I had the starting to put on weight, heading into London Marathon. London went better. I was actually slower than my Chester, but I suspect the reason it was slower is because in Chester I was on a massive positive split because my first one was a half marathon PB, whereas
Yeah.
London I didn't achieve my goal, which was to finish the marathon without walking any. Around about you mentioned mentally tough. Round about mile 17, 18, the London Marathon is, and apologies to anyone who happens to live there, it's not the nicest area in London. It just doesn't look, or it didn't at the time, doesn't look nice. And it just got to me that I've still got more than 10K to go. I'm in this not very nice area of London, nothing, not really a lot of clarity. And it just got to me. So I ended up running the way in. But I will circle back to talking about marathon training is I would recommend everyone does a marathon once just for the training because it can make you do some weird things to hit your mark. So, for example, we mentioned Tough Mudder. I had a week where I was meant to do a 17-mile long run that week, and it happened to coincide with doing a Tough Mudder. And when it came to Tough Mudder, I'd also volunteer. We've talked about this already. I've got to get involved. I've got to throw myself into these things. So I was volunteering and that. And yes, I volunteered on the Thursday, got home about 8 p.m., had to do my long run because I couldn't do it on the weekend. I did 17 miles, never going more than a mile away from my home because I was so convinced I would quit. But I did it. The neighbors probably were about to call the cops on me because I must have gone through the same places over and over again. They probably thought I was looking to case their joint.
You were just frozen for me, so just repeat the last 10
Just repeat.
seconds.
I was,
Yeah.
don't worry, it happens occasionally. I was just saying that I did 17 miles without ever going further than 1 mile from my house. And the neighbors were probably getting worried because I was doing the
Yeah.
same things
You were
over and
just
over again.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah, up and
who
down.
would not? I would be worried too. I would call the cops too.
Yeah. They didn't. So we had that. We then had COVID, which unfortunately we've no race to plan for. And with being an efficient person, the training dropped all the way off. The eating that had ramped up due to marathon training started ramping up a bit, and I started ticking up. I never got to where I was previously, but I did get into a situation where I'm not happy at the moment with who I am, and we're trying to drop again.
Mhm. Okay, well, but the good of it is that you didn't went back all the way where you was before. That's the good of it because that happened very lot of times. So and then I think that's double frustrating if you end up there or even more, where you were before and you probably are one of those people promise yourself, I will never end up there again. That's what most people do when they are on the good way. And so it's, yeah, at least it wasn't all the way, let's say like this. Okay, so and when did you start the OCR podcast then? Straight when you started to do Tough Mudder yourself or no?
No, this was a product of COVID. It's an interesting
Okay.
story.
Yeah.
Okay. Part of my OCR days, I befriended a gentleman by the name of Matt B. Davis, who a few people are aware. It was a virtual friendship. I sent him a letter one day. I think I was talking about Spartan making a mistake and upsetting a lot of runners. Who'd have thought, Spartan upsetting a lot of runners? That never ever happened. But yeah, they're upsetting runners. I sent it to Matt. Matt read my email out, and from there we went back and forth, just chatting. I'm not sure if listeners are aware, during COVID, Matt and a friend of his at the time, Josh Chase, set up the OCR Discord, which yeah, grew quite big. He also within that had people who he knew, who he added into a little bit of a private Discord called the Upside Down. So relatively close to Matt and a lot of other people who've become lifelong friends. Then I get a message out the blue from Matt saying this gentleman, Alan Moore, who is now known to all my listeners as producer Alan, but is known to the obstacle world as being Muddy Duck. This guy has
Okay.
approached me about doing an OCR podcast. I know nothing about him. Is he a good guy? I was like, well, I don't know much of him. He's kind of a celebrity within the UK OCR scene. He set up the UK OCR Facebook group, which had like 20,000 people part of it, like rivals some of the Hyrox groups. No, like I know the official Hyrox one has many multiples of that, but there's a lot more people on Facebook now. And that was the UK. So I was aware of him. And somehow I ended up being the Alan to Matt B. Davis translator because they are similar personalities, and my personality tends to be diplomatic. They've got
Yeah.
wonderful personalities, but they both, if there's a clash, they're of similar personalities. So I became a translator. So the story about Alan
That
is,
sounds funny and worrying at the same time
yeah,
to be in that
uh,
position.
yeah. So originally the UK OCR podcast was on Matt's platform, and
Okay.
then Matt decided, well, actually, quite frankly, people are on my platform to listen to me. So we went to our own platform. I served basically as Alan's effectively researcher or something like that. Um, I don't think I ever had a job title. And like I say, I translated between the two because Matt trusted me, Alan trusted me. They trusted each other, but it was just the way it worked out. So I ended up as a researcher. I was never ever meant to be a podcast host. What happened was me and Alan would be chatting back and forth just about the podcast. And Alan was enjoying the conversations. And he was like, you know what? Let's do a second show on this UK OCR because the UK OCR podcast was interviews. And he was like, let's do a separate show on that. I'm going to take a pause and just explain. Alan found podcasts during COVID, and
Okay.
like many people who've discovered things, thought, oh my God, this is wonderful. Why does the world not know about these things? I'm going to set up the first ever OCR podcast. And then suddenly realized there was quite a few already. He found Matt's and reached out to Matt, and that's his side of the story. So, flash forward, Alan is doing interviews. I'm helping him as a researcher. We suddenly decide to do what we call the Swift Half, which would be an OCR news show where me and Alan, initially, it was meant to be a half an hour show. The first show was 40 minutes. The second show was 45, and they've been around an hour seven ever since. So the Swift Half never really lived up to what it was supposed to. And that's still going to this day. We talk about OCR, we talk about running because Alan does a lot of ultra running now. We talk about fitness racing, and a lot of time it's just me and Alan having a catch up and just enjoying it and pressing record whilst we do it. So that's how I ended up in the OCR podcast world.
Okay. And so going back to 2020, so how did you found out about, well, let's just name it Hyrox, because it was kind of the first of its version of racing, let's say it like this. So was it just as the same as you knew about Tough Mudder, it exists, or did you found out by the first UK event, or did you know it before it came UK, or?
No, it's an interesting story again, in that we have Matt B. Davis to thank for this. People probably don't realize how Matt, people think of Matt as the hybrid fitness media. I almost got the name of his show
Yeah.
wrong then. Sorry, Matt.
Yeah.
But people think of that and they think of it of only going 3 years or so. But actually, Matt was one of the first people to start showing it, in that Matt used to do a lot of live streams. By today's standards, they were incredibly arcane, but Hyrox, they conquered Germany. Well, they'd done all right in Germany. They saw their next conquest as being America. They went
Yeah.
over there. They spoke to Hunter McIntyre. Hunter McIntyre has a relationship with Matt through the obstacle racing side. Hunter wanted eyeballs. Hunter spoke to Matt. Matt did the first few of those. So he did the Dyson Invitational. He apologies, listener. He did the Dyson Invitational. He did the Chicago event and just streamed them on mobile phones. And because I'm a big fan of Matt, I was watching them with the intern, and she kind of fallen out of love with OCR, and she was like, "Oh, you know what? If this ever comes to the UK, I'd love to do that." And meanwhile, coincidentally, unbeknownst to us, a friend of ours from the obstacle racing world, Emma Waring, was in negotiations with Hyrox to bring it to the UK. Emma acted almost as she's been involved in a lot of sports, well, a lot of various strands of OCR and other sports in her local area. So her and a few others looked at getting Hyrox over to the UK. Initially, I want to say Manchester was meant to be 2021, was meant to be the first Manchester, but we were in and out of COVID, like
Yeah, of lockdowns, and yeah.
yeah, it was like the hockey corky in the UK. You all on mainland Europe probably thought we were the diseased island at one point. But we did get the vaccine, I guess. But yeah, so the original event was going to be that Manchester one, and Emma, because she was a fan of Swift Half, asked me and Alan just to do a little bit of coverage about their virtual Hyrox. Do you remember that with
Oh
Dave
yeah.
making people cry about their squats and that?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
so we gave Flowers some virtual Hyrox.
I didn't took
We
part of that because everything that got virtual, then I was like, no, I'm not
no,
doing that.
I didn't. I took part in Matt B. Davis did Ultra Virus Race, which was a virtual backyard ultra. I took part in that to some degree. That was fun. But yes,
Mhm.
we had this situation where the virtual event was on, so we plugged it on Swift Half. Meanwhile, I encouraged the intern to go on the Hyrox UK group and sign up. At that point, there was 300 members of the Hyrox UK group. I remember it being suggested, so she's long in that. Then London was scheduled. We arranged to go to London. We also arranged to go to Birmingham a few weeks after. Really easy to get a ticket, and I think the tickets were about €70, 65 pounds. So the
Yeah,
intern did
yeah,
that.
it was in the beginning 69 in Germany as well. Yeah. 69 euros. So yeah.
So yeah, so we did that. And circling back to what I said, I can't just go to an event that, in this case, the intern was doing, just kick back and do nothing. it's not in my nature, and I really wish it was. I'd probably get more sleep, but it's not in my nature. So we thought what we do is we do some content for the UK OCR podcast there. So I got race day interviews with a really funny I don't even know if I still have it, but this thing looked like it was actually a women's leg shaver. It looked like one of them or one of them old-timey mics, that the boxing announcers used to have. So I had that. It was terrible, but it managed to get us some interviews. So I did that whilst the intern did the Ladies Open. Then we went to Birmingham, did it again. Then I want to say in the winter of 2021, beg your pardon, Manchester 2022 was coming up. So for those of you who are not aware, this is the season where we went to Vegas in the end. Manchester 2022 was coming up. It was almost a sellout, or it was going to be a sellout. So me and Alan spoke with Emma, and we got on a Zoom call, and we were like, you know what? We probably should. This Hyrox thing seems to be doing okay. We've seen this story before. We've seen what's happened in UK OCR. There's a potential it might grow. You never know. We might have 5,000 people at event one day, maybe 6,000 if we're really lucky. Perhaps even 7,000. Who would know that? And we're like, you know what? We should probably just spin off a standalone podcast for that. And we bandied around various ideas, like Emma was involved with My Zone at the time. So we bandied around the idea that they would self-interview athletes, do a 15 minutes, and we've put it up. And we're banding around ideas. And Alan was like, well, I can't really do it. I'm already appearing on two shows, so I can't do a third show. And I kind of asked him in nonchalant, well, could you at least edit it? And he was like, yeah, probably. I said, well, in that case, I might as well do it. I have fun on Swift Half. Let's see it. It could be a 3 month thing, and that, and yeah. So we did that, and yeah, my first guest was this guy called Dave Claxton. I'm not sure whatever became of him. Any idea, Tanya?
I've never met that guy. I don't know who you talk about.
No, never heard him. But yeah, it was funny because in the early days we had no idea what to call the show. We wanted to continue. We've got UK OCR, so we wanted to have something similar. But what do you call this thing? People have called it various things. People have called it fitness racing. People have called it hybrid racing. People have called it fitness events or weird names and all that. And in the end, we decided that UK.HXR sounded better than UK.FXR. So that's how it was born. It was UK hybrid racing, but we wanted a fourth initial inverse. So we put an X in it. So that's how we got there. Little did we know that Hyrox doesn't really like the word hybrid, because whilst it's a great name in the UK and English speaking countries, in Germany and in other languages, hybrid racing doesn't make a lot of sense.
No, it was the weirdest thing for me to hear it, to be fair. And I was just like, what are people talking about? Because I knew Hyrox very early, right? Like in 2018. And and then at some point when USA UK came part of it, became part of it, it some people just started to call it hybrid, and I was just like, no, and then you need to know I'm an engineer. So we learn about hybrid, but that's in machines, in cars, in all that stuff. So for me it was just like, no, this is functional fitness. What are you talking about? But now it's a thing. Now everybody's a hybrid athlete. So, and I still don't. Yeah, I'm. It is a thing now. That's how we are called, so we accept it. But I still don't think it's the right thing to call it, to be fair, because like you say, it doesn't translate very well in other languages.
No, it absolutely doesn't. So I was lucky enough to eventually get more on the show. This was after Vegas, heading into the second UK season, and I actually asked him the question, what do we call it? And to give listeners a little bit of a history lesson, the word hybrid racing, I accredit to that guy Dave Claxton and another Dave Magida, because they kind of coined it on the OFX podcast, and their view was, yeah, hybrid athletes had kind of existed in their world, and they were like, oh well, you're doing running and you're doing
Okay.
strength, so you have got that hybrid, and it's Hyrox or hybrid, so sounds cool. So it was the two Daves who kind of birthed that. And yeah, we kind of picked it up. I've always never had too much of a preference, other than when people say hybrid rock star. I could probably get really mad at that. I used to. I don't as much now. So I asked more about what do you call this, and he was like, we call it fitness racing because fitness racing makes sense. And
Yeah.
more probably didn't realize that in the UK and USA, fitness racing had kind of been used as the byword for CrossFit that isn't affiliated with CrossFit. So
Ah,
we'd
okay.
so again, fitness racing sounds good in Germany, but at the time, that word had already kind of been associated with that kind of race. No, it's not. It's kind of like disappeared, and that, and Hyrox has kind of like taken over fitness racing. So because of that, I thought, you know what, we'll call it the Fitness Racing Podcast. So we kind of rechristened the podcast, but presented by UK.HXR because we had the social media account.
Yeah.
It's actually really easy to tag us with just 5 letters. And I always thought that was quite useful, that if people wanted to tag us, they could tag us. So we kept that. And we just did almost a soft rebrand as Fitness Racing Podcast. Something that I often get asked is, why didn't you just call it like the UK Hyrox podcast?
Well, I would not have done that if I'd be you, because then you just have the right to speak about one thing. What would you have? What would you do then when Deca appears and when Deadly Dozen appears and when Trica appears and all of the things, then you would not be allowed to speak about it because you're exclusive Hyrox, which other podcasts do. They just speak exclusive about Hyrox. But
It, exactly that reason. UK OCR had always been a platform which covered everything, and we had a sneaking suspicion. We were obviously aware of Deca, but we had a sneaking suspicion that more races would come, and we wanted to position ourselves. I will confess, sometimes I feel guilty because I don't think I cover as many races as perhaps 5 years ago me, Ian, wanted to, or 4 years ago it wanted me to. I know I do a lot of Hyrox news, I do a lot of Deca news, I do a lot of Deadly Dozen news, and some others like Nuclear Fit. I'll cover Gauntlet Games, um, the UK version of the hybrid games. I will occasionally mention and stuff like that. But there's probably lots of races out there. I feel a little bit guilty. But on the other hand, we're also to a stage where I also feel I've reached a place in the community where some people trust me, not everyone, but some people trust me. And I'd hate for my platform to be used to promote a race that never happens and people lose their money.
yeah,
So
right.
I try and have this idea of basically I want to check out the race, make sure they've done stuff. I don't like this idea of anyone ever losing money, and I don't want to be responsible for that.
Yeah, right. Okay, so one more question. So, did you took part of the first UK Hyrox race? Did you took part as a participant, or were you just like highlighting and doing the coverage stuff and yeah?
No, unlike, and this is not meant as a shot at anyone who signs up to a Hyrox, like some people sign up to a marathon. I respected the race in a way, and it almost seems old-fashioned now in our current situation. But to me, it was the peak of physical performance, and I was not at the peak of my physical performance. I didn't want to do a race until I felt ready. I eventually did the fourth event with a friend of mine, Mike Noland. But the only reason I did that was because his partner had let him down and I was a passenger. Mike Nolan was effectively doing a solo open then, and I was doing bits and trying to hold on the rope. He had to instruct me the correct way of starting a ski erg in the warm up. I
Okay.
don't even know if people do it now, but the quick two tugs to get the gyro moving.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He taught me that. Taught me sled push and all that on the fly. I was a passenger. And I can't then remember when I did my next Hyrox, if I'm honest. um, but I ended up injuring myself, so that there was that on
In
the
that first race? No.
first race. Yes,
Oh.
I I tore something in my abdomen doing the lunges because I'd never lunged 20 kilograms in my life. And they don't teach you that 20 kilograms actually a lot of weight, particularly if you don't do
Yeah,
regular lunges.
yeah.
So
It's
yeah,
more than it looks like on the first look because you think, ah, it's just 20, but do 10 reps and then you think different already.
and so I didn't know how to do it properly. My core was very weak, so I tore something. So
Mm,
I can't remember when I next did a Hyrox, and
crazy.
I'd love to tell you that I was incredibly well prepared for my Hyrox. And thereafter, I set the world on fire. But no, I didn't. I did what I always did.
Nobody
But
was. I wasn't. I wasn't. I was just there and I want to go home again. I was like, what did those people talk me here into? And I was just scared. I was just sure I would not finish that thing. And I had no idea. I've never done competitions in my life, so not really at all. And yeah, for sure, nothing with weights. Even though I was moving weights in the gym already at the time for a few years, and that's also why I got through for sure because I had like a basic functional fitness body already. So and that's what you need. But yeah, I mean, we had not the stuff at all. I also have never really touched a ski or something. We didn't even had it in the whole country. So yeah.
yeah,
All right.
it's so fun that first Hyrox experience, and I take my hat off to anyone who goes straight into it, and good luck. But yes.
Yeah, and then I did a solo. I didn't even know there were doubles. I had no idea. And also I think I'm not sure, I would need to look it back, but I think in the first events doubles was not really a thing. It was more normal that you do it alone.
Yeah,
So
that
yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. All right. So just to round this off, as you already spoke that, but I also had it as a question before I even know that. So you are like a little bit an all-in person and an addictive personality, you say, in your words. And so my question would have been, what do you think you depend the most in your life? It's a little bit a different question, but due to your relation with being addictive, it probably comes across different for you then.
Sorry, Tanya. So
Yeah,
what am
sorry,
I
it was
depending
not
on?
great. It was not.
No,
Yeah,
no, it's okay.
what do you think you depend the most in your life on? So what do you think you're the most dependent on? It can be whatever, your job, it can be a person, it can be food, it can be. It's just
Honestly,
a random question.
no, it's a good question. I was honestly, I was stalling just to think of the answer. So thank you for giving me that time. Honestly, being useful. It sounds strange, but you get a weird amount of, I'm not going to say pleasure, but you get a weird amount of validation, I guess, out of being useful. I don't care for being a celebrity or anything like that. I don't care for fame. I check my bank account. I definitely don't care for fortune, but feeling like you're contributing to making the world a better place, it's probably a better high than any of them ones that you can purchase.
Okay. Okay. That's a good answer. I like it. Because, it can be in every direction. And then my second question, because you mentioned you be a little bit addictive, why do you think, or where do you think that comes from? Because usually there is a reason. Sometimes we are aware, or sometimes we have an idea why we are like this, but not necessarily. Probably you've never thought about it. I would say you did, but
It's a family trait. It's family trait. It's probably genetic. It may be nature, it may be nurture, but I grew up in I, I grew up in a for a time a one person family, as in my mother and father divorced. It was for the best. People always got awe at that point, and I was still young kid. But my mum, she'd always be doing something. She'd always be working because she had to. She had to raise two kids, and she'd then be doing things for the local community and that kind of thing. And that was kind of passed down. It was something my dad has as well. He always has to be doing something. He just can't sit around. When we went on holiday, our holidays would consist of you wake up at whatever time, you go for breakfast, and then you're doing an excursion somewhere. I've seen some incredible places. I'm really thankful. The irony is I then didn't fly on a plane for like 20 years, possibly because I thought, you know what, I've seen most of what I want to see. And yeah, so my mom and dad would always go out and do stuff. I don't know if addictive is the correct way of describing it, but it feels like it. My sister's the same. She is someone who goes all in. She is older than me, so when she wanted to play women's football, wouldn't you know it? Soon she was the treasurer and then the chairperson of that women's football team. Meanwhile, she was at university getting her teaching degree whilst working a full-time job. It's a family trait.
okay. Yeah, makes sense. It's a lot of time like this. It depends on how you got raised or whatever. Same with the food addiction, or there are a lot of other drugs. Have you taken drugs already? No, you don't need to answer.
No, no,
No,
I'm again, this is possibly
it's
another part of
better for
my,
you.
yeah, it's another part of my personality in that I even if I'm drinking, I won't drink a lot. I like to be in control of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Again, possibly it goes back to that being useful driver, that quite literally I'll find myself as a designated driver from time to time.
Hmm. Okay. So, is there anything about you as a person and about your life, anything we didn't mention, or anything you want to share, like which was like a big change in your life in positive way, probably, or yeah, anything like that? Or did we cover the most important stuff?
We covered most of it. There was family tragedy. My mother passed away. Ironically, just before that Manchester 2022 event, and we were thinking about not going there, but we decided mother would have wanted us to be there, and I did, and yeah, most people didn't know at the time. Those that did, though, were incredible. There are some people that I'm not going to name names and embarrass them because they were just being good humans.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, maybe one day we will, but for the time being, just say some no fairly big Hyrox stars got on my I'll never hear bad things about him list that day.
Okay. Okay. So then I think we covered everything. And I'm happy that you were so open about your story, because I would suspect that most people don't know much about you and your story, about your health journey and your sport journey, and how you ended up in being the Fitness Racing Podcast from UK, not to call it wrong. And yeah, that's very interesting. Thanks a lot for your time. And then we see us in a part 2 again.
Thanks for listening. And if you have any questions, or if you want to have any information about other topics, other questions, just reach out to us via @BeYourOwnMotivation on Instagram or via email. This is team.yourmotivation@gmail.com.